This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 47 of the DCAU Review. I am your host, Cal, and along with me, as always, the DCAU Review Twitter guru, Liam. Liam, it's finally here.
We got some tweeting to do today, boys.
Man, we are incredibly excited. As we've been hyping up for weeks now, it's finally here. We just got finished watching Justice League versus the Fatal Five, and man, it's something else.
It's a whole bunch of fun.
Yeah.
And we'll get into this as we go into our traditional categories, but it's just there's the nostalgia factor. There's also sort of the marriage of like a more modern, the way that DC Comics itself has kind of changed since Justice League Unlimited went off the air. Obviously, with the introduction of characters like Jessica Cruz or Miss Martian, who may have been around but wasn't particularly prominent at that point. Getting to see new characters, some old returning faces. You also have like the Legion stuff, and it's just a big recipe for, you know, it has that nostalgia factor, but it doesn't just rest on its laurels, or it doesn't just hit you with nostalgia. It actually does try to tell a new, unique story with some new characters.
Absolutely. So if you are just listening to us for the first time, maybe you're checking this out, you're excited, maybe you just got finished watching it, maybe you're looking for a little preview, this is going to be filled with spoilers.
Yes.
So if you have not watched the movie yet, do not listen to this podcast before you do that. Or if you do, just be prepared, because we're going to talk a lot about the plot. We're going to talk a lot about what happens during this awesome movie. But Liam, if the listeners are tuning in for the first time, let's just remind them, when we review, whether it's a movie, an episode of from the DCAU, we break it down into 4 different categories, then we give an overall score. Remind the listeners at home what those categories are.
Yeah, so we got, like you said, we have our 4 main categories. First one is plot. We have visuals/animation. We have music, and we have voice acting. Those are all, each category has a rank from 1 to 10. We give that out, so our final score will be blank out of 40. We also have the ability to add a special bonus point if there's something that isn't really covered in those 4 main categories, or if it's just a scene or a moment or something that really deserves its own special shout-out, then we can also give out a bonus point, and there's a special sound effect that goes with that.
That's right. We love playing sound effects on this podcast, too. But yeah, so we always start with our plot, and why don't we, I think that's the perfect place to keep starting here for this episode. So our movie, I gotta be honest, initial thoughts when I first saw some of the featurettes and leading up to this, and they mentioned that it was going to be very heavily centered on this sort of what seemed to be a romance between Starboy and Jessica Cruz. I was certainly excited because it's Justice League and return of all of our favorite DCAU characters, but was also hesitant that it was going to be focused on their story mainly, and we weren't going to get much out of, it was just kind of going to be their story in the midst of the DCAU, and it was a little bit nervous, and while it is heavily focused on Jessica Cruz, it basically is a Jessica Cruz movie, I would say, with Starboy playing a large supporting role, and then you have the rest of the Justice League in there as well, playing their parts. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate that it was centered, and I think you mentioned when you were discussing about, in the intro, just what this movie is there is enough of nostalgia thrown in. There's enough of little bits and pieces and nods and mentions of this character and mentions of this incident and where this character is and how that relates to where we are right now in the DCAU, that it felt comfortable, and it felt like it wasn't just they slapped the DCAU name on a new movie with the intention of getting people to watch it.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And like you said, it does focus very much on the Jessica Cruz Green Lantern character, and both her and Starboy have very pronounced mental issues. And sometimes superhero stories deal with these type of topics with like the subtlety of a sledgehammer. But I thought they did a good job here because they're dealing with a lot of real life things. One of the first time we really meet Jessica, she's talking to a therapist, and then she sort of has a sort of icy confrontation with Wonder Woman about how she's not even sure she wants to be a Green Lantern. She doesn't believe that she has this ability. The Ring is talking to her and telling her that she has this ability to overcome fear, and she just doesn't believe it. And then Starboy, who has his own mental issues, brought about by the fact that the antipsychotic drug that he takes in the future doesn't exist when he is in the present. So when he's thrust back in time while fighting the Fatal Five, he's kind of screwed.
Yeah.
So having those two go through different types of mental issues, but also sort of being able to find camaraderie in there. And as you mentioned, it kind of seemed like it was going to be a romance, but there really isn't. And it feels much more like just a budding friendship.
Certainly.
And there's like a throwaway line or two where it seems like maybe there's something there, but it's really not the focus of it. And as you mentioned, it doesn't pull focus from what this main plot is, which is that these Fatal Five men, 3 of the Fatal Five, the Persuader, Tharok, and Mono, have come back in time to try to free the Emerald Empress and
Valdis
from their prisons. They're kept in the past on Oa, and so we don't know that quite yet as the start, but so it's just that's your call to action basically. And
right.
So the main plot is Jessica sort of learning to overcome her fear and become the hero, this hero that's referred to as Limelight in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you're right. It's the subtlety of a sledgehammer is a quite exquisite way of putting that. Very succinct. I think that the reluctant superhero thing has been done, quite a few times. It's not. It's sort of. It could probably be known as a cliche nowadays, but usually it's because the superhero doesn't believe in their powers, or the superhero doesn't believe that they're worthy, and really in this sense, there's some allusion to that where she talks about why don't they go find Jon Stewart, which was a nice little nod, letting us know that it's definitely in continuity. Jon still exists, and they explain why. They don't exactly explain why Earth got another Green Lantern.
Right.
This would be Earth's third Green Lantern, I guess. But there's enough intergalactic police rings to go around, right. I guess. So who's to say? But
Guardians just give those out like candy these days.
Apparently they do. But it's more having to deal with her depression. Clearly, that she just she talks about not wanting to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And clearly real life stuff. And we've talked in prior episodes. By the way, you can check out our entire archive at DCAUreview.com if you'd like to. But we've talked in past episodes about different topics and heavy real world things that sometimes are effectively done on a children's cartoon, and sometimes not so effectively done. I felt like they did a good job in this episode, especially balancing between it and not making it a crutch and not making it light of it, but also not going super super heavy to the point where you yourself might become depressed. You know what I mean?
Yes, definitely agreed. And one of the other things as far as the tone of this all goes is it's a little more violent than your average I think episode of Justice League Unlimited. There's blood, there's wounds that are fairly large that you wouldn't probably see on a regular
Dead
episode.
citizens.
Yes, but this didn't feel like, oh gosh, it's a home video release. We can swear and show all the blood and dismemberment we want. It still very much feels like part of this DCAU. So I guess we can get into scores here of our plot. I gave it 7 out of 10. I think it's really strong. And I liked the ending where she sort of We get Jessica doing the Green Lantern's oath. She basically rebuilds her ring after the Persuader has destroyed it, and sort of unlocks her true potential. Starboy gives this this self-sacrifice at the end to basically reignite the sun and keep Earth from falling into darkness, which the whole plot of the Fatal Five's plot was to basically go back in time and destroy the Earth or wreak havoc on the Earth so that the Justice League would never go on to then inspire the Legion of Superheroes and all future generations of heroes.
Right. And well, initially it's just to free them, and then they're like, hey, while we're here, why don't we just screw everything up so that the Legion never exists to begin with? So they get this idea to blow up the sun.
Right. Very Cobra Commander.
Very honestly. Cobra Commander, yes. We're going to blow up the sun. Which, honestly, as far as the plot goes, I was a little like... because we've talked about it on this podcast. If not, we've definitely talked about it in person, and it's definitely not exclusive to us. But every superhero movie now, whether any superhero movie you go to and watch in the theater, there's some sort of cataclysmic event that is bound to happen at the climax of the movie that is going to destroy the Earth. And the superhero has to overcome all odds in order to save the Earth or in some cases in Marvel movies, the galaxy, or life itself. Like, it's always the stakes now have to be so high and at the climax of every movie that it just seems like, oh my goodness, it's always a sky beam. It's always a sky beam about to destroy the Earth, and they have to stop the sky beam. So that there needs to be something new. And this, they're going to blow up the sun. Oh, okay. All right, that's fine. And their reasoning behind it is not to destroy Earth now as it is. It's to affect the Justice League so there is no Legion of Superheroes. It's to affect their 31st century. Okay.
Yes.
So I was a little bit disappointed that was the route that they went, that it was, we're going to blow up the sun so that the Earth dies, and then... But who's to say, if we're going butterfly/Mandela effect here, how that doesn't affect them as well in their future?
Right.
But
I think the idea, and they don't really go into this, is that those time spheres are supposed to protect you from the chronal shifts.
Okay.
So I think that was the idea, is they're supposed to be inside the bubble when it all happens.
That's fair, and I get that. That's good. That's fair. But nonetheless, did it have to be that the sun was going to blow up?
No. I mean, you could have just said, if we kill Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman right now, then, most of the others.
Right.
And, of course, well, that's also part of it, as we learn later on, is that Jessica Cruz is one of the more inspiring heroes of this later generation of the Justice League.
Right.
And was maybe the more important character there, and they thought she was already dead, I guess, so they thought that they could just blow up the sun on their way out the door. So.
Which is interesting. You talked about continuity, and you talked about how there is a mention in the Justice League Unlimited episode where Supergirl goes into the future.
Yes.
Where they mention not having, and they actually, I believe, battle the Fatal Five in that.
Yes, they do.
And in that, they talk about how they hadn't seen a Green Lantern in ages. So it was a nice little bit of Easter egg continuity there, that even then they talk about how the Green Lanterns are legends in their time period and stuff. Yeah. So, and there is one particular scene that we've skipped over that we'll go back and talk about later, which is we kind
of have to talk about it in every category.
So we might as well here. So first of all, Starboy is a character. I felt like I was going to be annoyed with him the entire time.
Yeah.
They did not make him the prominent character, which I think helped, because I don't have much emotional investment in the Legion of Superheroes.
Right.
We don't know much about them. They have, two appearances in the DCAU?
Yeah.
Once in Superman the Animated Series, and then once in the Justice League Unlimited. So we don't have a lot of emotional investment with those characters. So it was smart, I think, of the writers not to make him the focal point, but to make him a supporting, a strong second character. I think that I was surprised that I liked his character as much as it is, but what happens now? Let's just speculate. What happens now that in the future that he's died in the past?
Well, I
Does
guess
that affect the timeline?
I guess he still existed in the future up until the point when he goes back to the past.
Whew.
So,
all right.
yeah.
So there's like a time loop that'll be created there that the Justice League
Yes,
I think
so he was born in order to go back in time and die.
Gotcha.
Basically.
Okay. But I don't know. Did he melt in the sun?
It's not clear, or if he just
forever
became the sun.
He forever has to hold the sun together.
Yes, so he could theoretically still be in there.
He's just like the guy that rolls the boulder up the hill.
Yeah.
And has to
Good reference.
Yeah.
Cultured.
Yes. Yeah. I can't tell you his name. I forget what his name is, but yeah, the guy that has to carry.
Or Atlas, who had to hold the world
Yes,
up.
there you go. Now we're thinking exactly. All right. Yeah. So the scene that we're talking about specifically, if you've watched the movie already, again, spoilers. If you haven't watched it, this is probably going to be your favorite scene too.
Yes.
But they go into Starboy's mind with Miss Martian, who we didn't even get a chance to talk about yet. But Miss Martian is a character introduced to the DCAU in this episode, or in this movie rather.
She's kind of there to be like a new teen sidekick for Batman.
Yeah, I wish we had gotten... My only complaint, I didn't hate the character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate the character of Miss Martian. I feel like there's a lot of people that don't like her as a character. Kind of
depends on how much you like Young Justice, the show,
right,
I think.
Right.
If you're a fan, you'll love her. If you're maybe not such a big fan of that show, you maybe aren't
right.
a huge fan of hers.
So I don't have an opinion of her kind of either way. My one complaint was we didn't get a backstory, not even like a throwaway line. We got a throwaway line for John, why Jon Stewart wasn't there, and why Jessica.
We got to mention a Hawk Girl as well.
Hawk Girl got a throwaway line. We didn't get really mentions of any of the other big seven. However, as we're about to discuss, we go back. Miss Martian and Batman and Jessica Cruz go inside Starboy's mind. They do the thing where they're inside his mind, and he takes them through this Legion of Superheroes museum, which then has a special wing dedicated to the original Justice League.
Yeah,
and it's just the coolest.
Absolutely. There's statues of many members of the Justice League, not just the original seven, but you do see all of the original seven. You see Hawkgirl, Martian Manhunter, the Flash, and then you see the expanded roster. You see Aquaman with the hook hand,
still canon. That's right.
The Atom. You see Captain Marvel / Shazam. You see Captain Atom.
Yep.
Green Arrow, Black Canary. You see a statue of Miss Martian in the back. She's all excited because that's really her plot thread, is that she's like a trainee still, mm-hmm. and Batman's sort of busting her chops about not letting her in the league. There's a hostage situation that they deal with together at the beginning of the movie where she kind of botches it a little bit, and Batman sort of takes her to task for it. But so she's all excited to see that. And then there's like this side room that's dedicated just to the Green Lanterns of Earth.
And this is going to open up a huge can of worms of continuity here.
Maddie and James, I'm so sorry for you DCAU timeline boys at the Watchtower database.
It's going to be a mess at this point, because not only do we see Jessica Cruz and Jon Stewart, we also get Kyle Rayner in his 90s costume,
yes.
Which is technically his current costume,
yes.
I guess.
They've reestablished that as his suit in the current comics.
Which we never saw in previous DCAU incarnations.
In his first appearance in Superman, he's basically wearing the suit that John wears.
Right.
And then in the Unlimited episode, he's wearing more of like his mid-2000s suit with like the white emblem on his chest.
Right.
So we've never seen Kyle Rayner look like this.
So we get that Kyle Rayner, and then we get Guy Gardner.
Right, never mentioned before.
Who was never mentioned before, never seen before. And if this is a futuristic hall of honoring the Hall of Justice or whatever, honoring the prior Justice League, I guess you could say that they happened sometime in the continuity before Batman Beyond and after... Yeah. After Justice League Unlimited stops.
Yes.
But there's no mention, it's not like they're surprised to see, there was no like, who's that Lantern, right, or something like that. And then you also get Hal Jordan.
Right, Hal Jordan as he appears in the Once and Future Thing Part 2.
Right, with the white gloves and like classic Hal Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how this Good luck, guys. Is all I can say.
Good luck to Maddie and James
in figuring this out. Check those guys out at Watchtower Database, by the way. Huge fans of the work that they do. But they have a lot of stuff with DCAU timelines. But I don't know how you're going to fit that stuff into the timeline. I think we forgot to mention also Dr. Fate was represented with the statues, as was Zatanna. I don't think there was anybody else.
The Huntress,
that we missed. The Huntress, you're right, which was a surprise. No, not my favorite character of the question was not represented.
No.
I guess he wasn't ever an official member. He's
the conspiracy guy,
right? So he wouldn't want a statue of himself to be honored. He wants to stay off the grid.
But a lot of those prominent characters from, especially the first season of Justice League Unlimited, and obviously the original 7 as well. So. But yeah, that scene it's so phenomenal, and we'll mention a few other things about it certainly when we get to music. But it's a really good. It does do a very good job of representing a silly and sort of cartoon Saturday morning supervillain as the Fatal Five's plot was. Mm-hmm. It does establish that idea that without the Justice League, there would be no Legion of Superheroes, and if there's no Legion of Superheroes, then you can't. Then the Fatal Five have no one to stop them in the 31st century.
Exactly.
So, as sort of a little bit hammy, over-the-top, superhero-y as it is, I accept it because, one, that scene was so darn great, and two, because it plays within the rules, right? If you set up the rules, even if the rules are silly, as long as you play within those rules, I'm generally okay. So I think I mentioned it like 10 minutes ago, but my plot score was 7 out of 10. What about yours?
7 out of 10. Mine was 8 out of 10.
Very different.
Very different. And if you've never listened to us before, you'd be shocked to hear that we had similar scores here. It's really good. I really liked it. I think going in with a sort of excitement but a muted expectation, like not expecting it to be anything terrific, and it was good. It was as good as I remember if this had been a Justice League Unlimited episode or a Justice League episode, I think I would have liked it, and we'll talk a little bit more at the very, very end as opposed to just some general thoughts on this, but I think the plot is solid. Again, not so on board with the blowing up the sun stuff, but I get it. Also, I felt like the ending was left a little to be desired, like Jessica Cruz meets the Legion of Superheroes and they shake hands. And
I think the idea is that they all walk past Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and they all go right to Jessica Cruz. So
that's pretty good. That's pretty deep. But it just kind of like blank. It just kind of ends on a downer a little bit because
Definitely.
Starboy is dead, and you kind of mentioned, you're like, well, maybe there's a post credit scene, and there was not a post credit scene. So
correct.
You just kind of like, okay. Well, I can't wait for the next DCAU,
in 2 years, maybe
incarnation. Hopefully, if this one does well. By the way, make sure you guys are supporting this.
Please,
either subscribe and watch it on the DC Universe when it comes out. It'll be out on April 15th, I believe.
Same day that it comes out on physical media. It'll be on the DC Universe streaming service.
Yeah, if you guys want more of this stuff, we got to support it. So do what you can. Do what you can to do that as your wallet allows. All right, Liam. My score for plot was 8 out of 10. We can jump now to the next category. We might as well head over to animation and visuals. A lot of cool stuff, as we already mentioned. Yes. We just talked about that scene, but the scene in the museum, a lot of great Easter eggs, a lot of stuff in there. But there was some other subtle stuff, some surprises that maybe you weren't expecting. The very first one to me would have been the Miss Martian sort of transforms into Tim Drake.
Yes,
which was funny.
So this is pre-Return of the Joker flashback.
Correct. We know that on the timeline. There you go. More timeline stuff here.
I believe that's something Bruce Timm has always said. Basically, is that the Return of the Joker flashback is always after everything else they do.
Which makes sense.
So, because then they don't have to worry about, whatever with the Joker dying and Tim turning into the Joker and being fired as Robin and all that. So,
right.
If they ever decide to do more stories in the, the new Batman Adventures era, they don't have to worry about that because that's just sort of always looming
right
in the future.
But it was the very first time that we got to see Justice League Batman with Tim Drake Robin.
Correct.
We've not seen those two together before, so that's interesting.
See a JLU versions of Two-Face
which was a super welcomed surprise.
Yeah, that was...
Holy crap! So Starboy, once he lands on Earth and does not have his medication to take, is captured by Batman and taken to Arkham Asylum. And in Arkham Asylum, we get, it's not. Do they show a shot of the gates that it's Arkham Asylum? I don't remember them. I don't remember them explicitly saying that it was Arkham to start. But then not too long after, we see him start interacting with a very familiar Two-Face who looks very similar to the way he did in the New Batman Adventures.
Absolutely,
which of course didn't deviate too far from the original Batman either. But
then we also get Harley and Ivy in a small cameo there, where there's sort of a prison break that Starboy causes, and there is a mention, by the way, at some point in the Return of the Joker, that the original Arkham Asylum at some point is like abandoned and they move to a new facility.
Oh,
so this could be the new facility, and the original Arkham, which is where Joker is holed up with Harley and Tim in the flashback of Return of the Joker, is has now been abandoned, and now this is the new Arkham Asylum.
Fascinating theory. I like that. I like that a lot, because it did not look very much at all like the Arkham that we remembered. It looked very modern, as opposed to the old sort of 1930s or indescript era that the original Arkham Asylum was. So that's a very, very good call. I like that. I like that could potentially fit in the continuity there. Good callback. There is a mention also, Starboy does mention that there was a clown in there that happened to love pudding. No actual visual shot of the Joker, but he at least got a hat tip. So we know that the Joker is alive in this episode, and so again, that definitely confirms this is pre-Batman Beyond Return of the Joker flashback. But I loved the animation, honestly, in this episode. I don't know if it's just putting this sort of juxtaposed to the original. We've been watching a lot of Justice League recently, and noting how a lot of the backgrounds and how bright it is, and this, despite there being some daytime stuff happening here, a lot of it's at night, but even the daytime stuff doesn't look as glaringly bright. Yeah,
and you can tell these designs are a little bit tweaked even from the JLU designs.
Definitely.
But it's still very much like the Batman and Harley Quinn animation was pretty much the New Batman Adventures look, just slightly tweaked. That's basically what this is. You can still very much see that these are the same designs, just sort of redrawn with slightly different models to play better in a more modern animation game.
I thought at times, so Superman's look was a little inconsistent. I mean I didn't have a huge problem with it. Mm-hmm. He looked more like, I commented he looked more like the Justice League Action Superman at times. I don't know if it's the same animation team or what, but he looked a little younger, a little more angular. I think that Superman is.
It kind of looks like if you take Superman the Animated Series and Justice League Superman and kind of just mashed them together.
Correct.
It's kind of like Superman S-Task's head on Justice League Superman body at some points.
But there was some great. I mean, the coloration is good. Batman is when he's featured. I even mentioned he looks cool in the episodes. Very, very well done. Wonder Woman gets a sword added, but she, other than her season 1 cheekbones, which were gone in season 2, she looks pretty much the same. I think that mainly the things to comment on would be the character designs for the Fatal Five. Jessica Cruz, I didn't like Jessica Cruz's hair. It was just for some reason when they try and do weird hair for females. We talked about that back in the Batman Beyond episode.
Yeah.
Even the guys that have like the one giant strand of hair across their head when they're balding, something weird about when they try and do weird hairstyles. Whatever her hairstyle was distracting to me for a lot of the time. And one last distracting piece was Mano's logo on his chest. For some reason, I don't know, and I guess we could look it up and see, but his logo on his chest looks like the logo for the Sinestro Corps.
Yeah.
And I pointed that out, and there's no specific reason why I think that they did that. maybe that's how it's always looked. Maybe the Sinestro Corps ripped off his logo.
Right.
I don't know. But it was it's distracting enough for every time he showed up in a scene, which was a lot, for me to say, it's weird that looks just like the Sinestro Corps.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I was really impressed with the animation. There were two small things that took me out of it. One was Jessica Cruz's hair. The second was I noticed in one of the very first scenes, they made a mistake, and I had to give it mine, subtract a point for it. They forgot to color in Batman's bat in one of the scenes he was chasing Starboy.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very quick, it's very subtle, but Starboy's on the ground, Batman's there, and the bat was not colored in. You just saw the outline of the bat.
Huh.
With that said, very strong. I really enjoyed the constructs that they let Jessica Cruz do.
Yes.
Some hammers and chains and guns and a bunch of different constructs for them, and even some of the surprise cameo from the other Green Lanterns.
Yes.
Their constructs also were great too. So I gave a score of 8 out of 10 for animation.
Yeah, my score is 10 out of 10.
And that is the perfect score sound.
Oh,
by
yes,
the
it
way.
is. One of my things, other than you mentioned that we have a couple of other Green Lanterns show up. In addition to the statue cameos of the Earth Green Lanterns, we also have Salak and Kilowog show up. Mm-hmm. Now, Kilowog here looked a lot more like how he
Arcus
looked.
Chummock, too, by the way.
Arcus Chummock, yes.
And the Diamond Guy.
Yes, Diamond Guy.
I feel like he has like an apostrophe in his name. It's like,
I think you're right.
Kira or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
But,
I'm thinking Star Wars now.
But yeah, Kilowog and Salak actually have like spoken roles. They kind of come in to try to help Jessica Cruz when she's been captured by the Fatal Five on Oa. Kilowog looks a lot more like the Green Lantern, the animated series.
You did comment
the
on
CGI version of that they did. I believe it only lasted one season, 20-some episodes. It's also on the DC Universe streaming service, and hopefully we'll get a chance to check that out, which makes sense. Obviously, Bruce Timm was involved in the character designs on that show as well, so it fits, and it doesn't look demonstrably different than the Kilowog.
He's a little more pig-like, a little more
It's,
stocky.
yes, it looks like maybe he gained some weight.
Yeah.
between when we last saw
Agreed.
him and now, but it's not so drastically different that it takes you out of it or anything.
Sure.
And it was cool to get those cameos as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and aside from that, the final scene when Emerald Empress's eye is going to blow up the sun and Superman chases after it. There's some really breathtaking visuals as
Agreed.
Superman takes off and you just see the red streak blow up into the sky, and then they sort of follow him as he's getting closer and closer, trying to grab the eye before it can go into the sun. And the light keeps changing around him as they get closer to the sun, and then when the explosion happens, really, really tremendous stuff. And a lot of the fight scenes near the end where kind of each leaguer pairs off with a member of the Fatal Five, and they have a little fight. Batman fights Mano, Superman fights Thaldus, and Wonder Woman fights Tharok. It's really, really, really cool stuff. And
what did you think of the Fatal Five's designs as a whole?
I liked him a lot, especially...
Thaldus was really the only one I was familiar with. That was because he had a DC Universe Collectibles figure back, or a DC Universe Classics figure back in the mid to late 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I remembered them from the Justice League Unlimited
I do not
episode.
remember that episode at all, I guess.
We'll review that somewhere down the line. But, they look pretty much the same there. I remember also there was the Legion of Superheroes cartoon, which James Tucker produced for a couple seasons, where they were also featured villains on that. So yeah, they look pretty much like how I've always seen them portrayed. We mentioned I liked Tharok's design the best because we've already seen a couple like half man, half robot designs.
Correct.
Even within the DCAU.
Correct.
Of course, if you expand it to outside DCAU, things like Cyborg, but within the DCAU, somebody like Metallo has already existed.
Right.
And they found a way to make him very visually interesting without repeating themselves.
Agreed. The fact that his arm, he has a very Metallo, comic book Metallo, like abilities as far as his, being able to create guns with his arms and form bombs out of nothing, I guess.
Yes.
But he is a cool visually, visually neat looking character. Even the human side of him, or the humanoid facial side of him, looks like a character design straight out of like the 1950s or something like that, with his like arched eyebrow and big demon eyes and stuff like that. Really well done. I think the character designs as a whole for this were good. Obviously, Jessica Cruz is a new design, but felt, other than her distracting hair, I felt like she fit right in with the DCAU designs. Miss Martian, I don't understand why they ended up giving Miss Martian as a character. I know that's what her character design is, but why does she have red hair? That never understood that. Jean, what is her? And because we didn't get a backstory, I guess her backstory in the comics is what's her relation to Jean?
Well, she was a white Martian,
okay,
who disguised herself as a green Martian, and then she portrayed herself as Jean's niece.
Okay.
Although in reality, I don't think they're actually related by blood, because she's a white Martian and he's a green Martian.
Right.
So, yeah, that's not delved into at all. And like we said, fingers crossed there'll be future projects where they can expand on this. But yeah, her design, and we don't see a lot of, we see her phase a few times. It's not clear if she has all the same powers that Jean has, because we don't really see her shapeshift at all.
Right. Nope.
We just kind of see her fly.
She phases, she flies, mind reading.
Yes, so she seems to have most of the same powers, but maybe
well, she shapeshifts into Robin.
That's true. She does shapeshift into Robin.
But she doesn't. Outside of that, she doesn't do any Jean would shape into creatures that we
like
didn't.
Snakes or dragons or things like that, or
it's so cool.
Turn himself to stone or stuff like that. So that we don't see her perhaps exhibit that same ability as Jean does as far as the shapeshifting goes. But yeah, I liked the design. It's interesting. It's a pretty unique design for Miss Martian, because usually she's looks almost like Martian Supergirl. Like she has the short skirt and the a lot of exposed skin, and here she's wearing a full black bodysuit. She still has the red crosses across her chest, the way that
reminded me of that. Was that the New 52 Martian Manhunter uniform?
There's a couple. I think it was actually the 1 year later, 2005 to 2007-ish.
That
look.
Black suit with the red. That seems to be his whatever media nowadays, because he looked the same in the Supergirl TV show too. I believe.
Yes.
But yeah, I think character designs are strong. I think the animation, except for that one minor hiccup and the hair stuff, I think it looks good. Like I said, there was a little inconsistency between the way Superman looked at certain times, but I think overall everything looked really, really smooth. There was no other like mistakes or things that stood out as distracting. I think that the places where the battles took place were great. I think, I think it was great overall. So both high scores on our end for that. All right, Liam, let's move over to our music. I will let you start with music because I've been rambling for a bit here. But
music in this is so good, and part of that is, as we mentioned, because this is the first DCAU project, first Justice League project in so long. They get to go back to a lot of old favorites, but I would say they don't overdo that either.
Correct.
Where it's just resting on your laurels, like we mentioned in plot earlier. But one of the first things that happen is when the time sphere first explodes and comes down to Earth, and it rains down on Metropolis, and Superman catches it. We immediately get Shirley Walker's Superman theme.
Thank God,
as epic as ever.
It was just like music to our ears. It was like, all right, here we go.
Yes, we're home. It felt like coming home. And when we first see Wonder Woman, we hear her theme from Justice League as well. And then, of course, we get a little bit of the Shirley Walker Batman theme as well.
I was scared because when Batman first appears, there was no Batman theme,
Correct.
And I was like, oh,
that was
no,
odd.
that was strange. Like, they didn't use the Batman theme. Like, did they decide not to, I don't know. Like, you're just running through your head like, oh, no, we're not going to get the Batman theme. But then we were very excited to hear it brought in moments later.
Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, you get those familiar themes. As we mentioned, we keep going back to that Hall of Heroes scene because it was so great. You get the original Justice League theme. played sort of very softly as
You also
they're
get
walking
the
through
Justice League
statues.
Unlimited theme.
Correct.
When the Justice League first kind of all appears together, you get the guitar.
Yes, you get the Unlimited theme. So they hit all of the major notes there. And there's also some really good, I thought, some of the music for the fight scenes. Again, for that final moment as Starboy is sacrificing himself. It swells in the right places. It holds back when it needs to be more dialogue heavy. Mm-hmm. It knew when to hold back and when to sort of go with the very grand, over the top moments. So
Jessica had a theme too that sort of comes out when she's giving the oath that you mentioned, after she leads the Fatal Five to Oa, and there's this battle between Kilowog herself and Salak to try and defend Oa, and she's, her ring is destroyed and she's buried under some rubble, and she has to use the Green Lantern oath to put the ring back together, so to speak. There's a cool theme that swells there and then continues when she comes to Earth to kind of save the day, as it were, as the Fatal Five seem to be getting the upper hand and are about to leave after they've launched the eye into the sun. Man, that sounds convoluted when you say it that way. But when she comes in and snatches them right before their little pod leaves,
yes,
there's a cool theme that swells there and continues within the action there. So I thought even the original theme there, hers, and the one you mentioned as Starboy is sacrificing himself was good too. The Dream Team reunites, of course.
Yes, absolutely. We had Christopher Carter, we had Michael McQuistion, and we had Lolita Ritmanis, who, of course, all did varying work on Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and I believe at least Christopher Carter was around back on Batman Beyond.
Yeah, so he did a lot of the Batman Beyond.
I believe he might have
stuff.
even done the theme for the main theme for Batman Beyond.
I believe he did, and it definitely shown there. Even in the scene where Batman is in Arkham Asylum as Starboy escapes, I commented, man, it sounds a lot like Batman Beyond here.
Yes.
Which is a good thing, because we've remarked in those episodes, again, you can go back and check out the episodes we've reviewed of Batman Beyond, but a lot of times the music is some of the highest rated things that we talk about in those episodes. So really just over the moon about how well this was done. You could tell, and if you follow those guys on Twitter, just how excited they've been about getting back into the DCAU and getting back together and being able to score something that was such a huge part of their careers and near and dear to them. And you could really, I think, feel that in the end product.
Absolutely.
I gave music a 10 out of 10.
Wow, yep, and I gave music a 10 out of 10.
There we go. All right.
So yeah, it's really quite tremendous. And like we said, I think the fact that you get all those familiar notes, literal notes, and then you also get some new original music as well. Like I'm probably gonna look into buying the soundtrack on iTunes or Apple Music, because I'd like to just listen to all of it and really get a better feel for it. But like I said, you get all the moments that you notice. The Wonder Woman scene when she's battling the Persuader. You get sort of a very triumphant version of her theme from Justice League. Mm-hmm. There's even a little bit of music that almost sounded like they were going for a version of like the DCEU Wonder Woman theme.
Sure.
The
best part of of any musical notes in any of those movies.
Correct. There's similar music. It doesn't quite go full. Doesn't actually use that music, but it's certainly a similar note, and then sort of melds that with the Justice League Wonder Woman theme. So it's really, really well. And as we mentioned in every category here, it's that everybody kind of gets a moment to shine, even though the original Leaguers that we know aren't the main characters here. They're still well represented, and they all get their moments, and their music and their accompanying themes are such a big part of those characters. So
right. Yeah,
it was great to hear / see that.
Absolutely, I agree. All right, why don't we move on to our final category of the day, Liam, which is voice acting. And we always do a recap of some of our players, of our voice actors, just to let the listeners know at home who they were listening to.
Yeah.
I mean, we really don't need to go into our mainstays here. We, of course, we have Kevin Conroy as Batman. We know we have George Newbern returning as Superman, which was, we were talking about this, that interesting debate. Are you a Tim Daly guy or a George Newbern guy?
I think we discussed this back on our very first episode of Justice League that we reviewed. I think I'm a George Newbern guy. Not that I dislike Tim Daly's performances, but I think there's just a little more nuance, a little more there's a little more emotion in George Newbern's performance, and part of that is if you've ever heard Tim Daly act in anything else, that's just how he talks.
Right.
Like he has a very monotone voice. So that, and I think that it's a little difficult sometimes in when you're only acting with your voice and you have sort of a monotone voice, it can be difficult to really get into those more emotional beats. And not that there's no good Tim Daly performances. We've certainly talked about them in like episodes like Apocalypse Now or something like that. But I just think overall, George Newbern, I think that's hashtag my Superman.
That's right. I would. That's a pretty strong argument. I don't think I would disagree with it. Who else do we have in Susan Eisenberg? Obviously. Is Wonder Woman to return. She doesn't do a lot. They don't have a lot of vocal parts for her there. She is probably third tier to Batman. I would say has the most of the original speaking parts, which Kevin Conroy. Great to have the goat back.
Yes.
And then, as we mentioned, George Newbern, Superman, has some equal dialogue. But of those original Justice Leaguers, I would say she probably has the least amount.
Yeah, definitely. She's, like I said, she sort of has an initial conversation with Jessica in the beginning of the movie. But then after that, she's just sort of there to sort of react to all of the sort of the havoc that the Fatal Five causes. So again, knock on wood, hopefully in future projects she'll get Susan Eisenberg will get more of a chance to shine as in her own right there. But always great to have her back. She's Wonder Woman to me.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah, so not as much here for Susan as we mentioned, but hopefully we'll be able to see her get a chance to shine more in future DCAU projects.
Hashtag JL reunion.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we have our I guess they're not really guests, it's a main cast because it's a movie. But my instincts were to say guest cast, but
right.
No. But we have Diane Guerrero as Jessica Cruz, who, as we mentioned, is basically the main character of this piece.
Yep.
She's probably best known to people that would listen to this podcast as Crazy Jane on the Doom Patrol live-action series that's going on.
I have not had a chance to watch it myself yet. But
I have. She's very good on it. She has
Okay.
a lot of range. The character is basically one that has like 65 different personalities, and
Okay.
each personality has a different superpower. So it's a lot of different, very, varying emotions and personalities to play, and she does a really good job there.
She's also on Orange is the New Black. If you haven't watched any of the DC universe, you would recognize her. She's one of the Latinas in Orange is the New Black. So
Very good.
Yeah, she's good on that show too.
Yeah, so I thought she did a very good job as Jessica Cruz here. There's a lot asked of her for someone who's never really played in this world before.
Correct.
Again, a lot of emotions to go through. When we see her at the start, as you mentioned, she's talking about how she can barely get out of bed some mornings, and then
I got to be honest. I initially, again, from those featurettes that they showed when they first announced this and revealed that it was going to be there, I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know. Because they showed like clips of her recording her audio, and it was like, ooh, I don't know if that's going to be any good at all. And I was pleasantly surprised and proven wrong. She was fantastic, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought she did a great job. And again, going for that journey from the tepid, sort of almost angry with herself. There's a line somewhere where you can't force your brain to do what it doesn't want to do.
Yep.
And sort of becoming the central focus, and then her finally getting her heroic moment at the end where she comes back and stops the Fatal Five. I thought she did a really good job. We have Elias Gable as Starboy. He was on the CBS show Scorpion, which ran for like 5 or 6 years. It might still be on.
We don't know. Those CBS shows go
forever. But so if you're a fan of the network television action dramas, you may be familiar with this man. But again, his first couple scenes I thought were a little rough.
Yes.
And it was more, and I felt like if he talks like this the whole movie, it's going to ruin it for me.
Agreed.
But thankfully it felt like he was, he got more, I don't know if it's just he got more comfortable or they just used different takes or if they just really wanted him to be really over the top and manic in those first few scenes. Which, I mean, that kind of does make sense based on what he was doing. He's panicking because, one, he's trying to stop the Fatal Five, and two, he's out of his medication.
Right.
So there's that. So,
another thought on that is that maybe because we learned that the character has this, has a mental disorder, that it sort of lends to that idea that, oh, okay, he's talking so monotone because he's off his medication. And if you've ever been around somebody or seen somebody or known somebody or you yourself, when you're not, there's a very stark difference between somebody who, when they take medicine for stuff like that, and when they don't take medicine for that. So, to me, I think maybe for me mentally, it was just kind of, I warmed up to that. Oh, this character isn't necessarily in their right mind, so him delivering his lines this way isn't bizarre.
Yeah, and I also think about it from the perspective of an actor. The idea is because he's off his meds, he's acting this way.
Right.
But we've never met quote-unquote normal, like, on-meds Starboy.
Right.
So he's playing a character who is different from what he normally is, but we don't really have reference for what he normally is, other than a few throwaway lines from Saturn Girl at the beginning, and a little bit as you mentioned, when they go into his brain, he talks about it a little bit. But yeah, I do think he did a very good job. He
was the one that I was concerned about the most, because same thing with those featurettes. I was like, oh, I do not like the way this guy is talking. It is going to be rough if he's going to be one of the main characters. And again, I think they did a good job of making him a supporting character, second tier, like upper echelon of second tier character, that didn't have him do the heavy lifting, because if he did have to do the heavy lifting, it might have been a different story.
Agreed. But rounding out this cast, we had Danielle Bobadilla as Miss Martian.
She was fine.
Again, like we said in visuals and in plot, she didn't have a big role to play other than to sort of be a bit of a comedic foil for Batman. And but again, she does a fine job. And then of course we had Kevin Michael Richardson, the veteran voice actor from plenty of projects, DCAU and non-DCAU alike, as Mr. Terrific.
Yes.
He does a good job. Not a ton. Mr. Terrific, we didn't even really mention him in visuals, but most of Mr. Terrific's stuff is visual stuff. It's a lot of the T-spheres that he uses sort of change into different shapes and have different functions to turn into like little discs, almost like a Mr. Miracle, and he can fly on them. Some are turning into like handcuffs almost to try to contain these Fatal Five guys.
Bomb holders.
Yes.
One goes over the one guy's head.
Yeah. So so there's not a ton of actual performance from Kevin Michael Richardson there, other than he's sort of brought in as the science guy to sort of try to explain some of the time travel and stuff.
I thought he was really good, though.
No, he does a very good job.
I know that's a controversial topic that we'll get into once we start maybe doing a The Batman episode.
Yes.
But
we'll talk about what we're doing next month at the end of our show here.
Yes.
But, yeah, absolutely. But rounding out the cast, we had Sumali Montano as the Emerald Empress. She doesn't have a big role to play, other than, again, a lot of her stuff is more visual at the end. She attacks the Green Lantern Corps once her eye is powered up, and then
fine.
She's fine. Probably the guy who talks the most out of the Fatal Five is Philip Anthony Rodriguez as Mono.
He was fine.
He does a solid job, and they sort of try to explain a little bit, because apparently him and the Emerald Empress are romantically involved, so this is a bit more personal for him than for the rest of the Fatal Five, who kind of just want to wreak havoc.
Yep.
So there's that, and then we have Peter Jessup as Tharok, who's a veteran voice actor, does a lot of video games, in Fallout and Destiny and several others there. So,
and one very important voice acting cameo, which we were surprised.
One in particular.
One Bruce Timm, a veteran voice actor as well, now made a return appearance, this time as the villainous Two-Face.
Yes.
Which we were shocked at the end, so this is hilarious now. He sort of has done a Joker, as, the voice of the main Joker's leader in Batman Beyond, and now he gets a go at doing Two-Face, which, gotta be honest, it was a really good impersonation. of Richard Mall, who played Batman, or who played Two-Face on Batman the Animated Series, of course. But I think he did a solid job, and it was we mentioned already that the cameo was pretty fun. There's a funny line where Starboy asks him if he's eating for two, which is funny. I thought Bruce did a fine job as Two-Face, all things considered.
Yeah, and what was funny was we were watching it, we were like, well, we know that's not Richard Mall.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty good impression.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be Bruce Timm. I think Bruce Timm also does like 2 or 3 other voices in the movie as well, which is of course a tradition in these comics. He's always got to do a background voice or something. So it was again just another one of those familiar things that makes you feel happy there. And of course we also had the legend Tara Strong, who voiced
another veteran.
Yes, voiced Saturn Girl in this piece. Of course, was Batgirl back in the day. Mm-hmm. Once Arlene Sorkin retired, she's also sort of taken up the mantle as.
I would say you could definitely pick out her voice as Harley Quinn and jumping around. She didn't have any lines, but the grunts and the oofs and the ahs and. It was just nice to see a lot of those familiar voices like Tara Strong or Kevin Michael Richardson get a chance to play with these some of these new faces and also with the old returning favorites. So I gave voice acting for a score. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Very close to being perfect. I think I would have given a perfect score. I just had.
I could have used a little more from the Fatal Five personally.
Yeah, agreed.
They're not bad, but they're not knocking it out.
And
of the park.
there was. This was just dying for a Corey Burton appearance.
Oh man, yeah.
How could we not
get played Tharok?
Yeah, clearly, obviously, any of those guys could have been Corey Burton, and we missed Corey Burton.
He could have played Brainiac 5.
Somebody, anybody. Like, where is my Corey Burton appearance? Because of that, I gave it a 9 out of 10. Call it nitpicky, but it's my score.
Hey, that's right.
What about you?
Yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Really strong. Didn't, like I said, certainly didn't dislike anybody's performance, but. A few minor things I think we could have done that would have really enhanced it, but an 8 out of 10 still a very strong score, obviously. And I think that would about bring us to our final scores.
It does. Let's total. Oh, there we go. And that sound effect, as we mentioned, we love sound effects on this podcast. Means that there is a bonus point. Liam, I'm going to assume that it's you. Do you have a bonus point for this episode?
I do, in fact, have a bonus point, and it won't take me very long to talk about it because we've been talking about it all episode long. But yeah, that scene in Starboy's mind where he goes into that Hall of Heroes, we see all of the very many Legion heroes make a cameo, and then we see the statues of the Justice League, the statues of the Green Lanterns, and the Green Lantern Power Battery. It's just all that scene with the statues, with the representation of what the Justice League means to these future generations, and of course the classic Justice League theme playing in the background during it. It checks off a box in every single one of our 4 main categories.
Yes.
And so I thought it was worth its own special point, just because when you can marry all 4 of those moments together, it really does, I think, drive home what makes these cartoons so special. There's a reason we've done 47 episodes of a podcast about this. There's a reason that you're listening to a podcast of a couple guys you don't know talk about that. And that's that shared love of, when you compare it to any other superhero animation, the voice acting, the plot, the music, and the visuals are it's second to none. And even all these years later, it's still the gold standard.
It's the best, and I'm going to throw this out there. It's the best shared universe in the history of DC. I mean, in the history of comic book outside of the print, we'll say that.
Yeah.
So if you're any sort of comic book media shared universes, sorry, this gets the edge over the Marvel Cinematic Universe for me.
Agreed.
They've done a fantastic job of doing what they do, but this is tops. That's why we have a DCAU review podcast and not a MCU review podcast.
I'm sure those exist too, though.
Yes, I'm sure they are.
Feel free.
Yes, exactly. All right, final scores then, I guess, Liam. My total, after totaling everything up, brings me to a very strong 35 out of 40, which is probably enough to land it within top 10 if I had to guess. We can go back and check later. But
yeah, there were probably some tied episodes, and
for sure.
Yeah, and I'll probably tweet out what our highest rated episodes were sometime this week.
Yes,
just to sort of do a refresher now that we're a little further into the show than the last time I did that. But yeah, my final score is 36 out of 40. Very different. We are brothers. If we didn't mention that on this episode, by the way, we've certainly mentioned it in past episodes.
Yes,
our scores are similar, but very rarely the same.
Yes, very rarely the same. Absolutely. But all right, so new tradition that we started probably 20 episodes ago was talk about rewatchability, and we discussed this before we started recording, just as a thought, and it's difficult because we just finished watching this episode, or this movie, for the very first time. It's our very first trip back to the DCAU, notwithstanding with Batman and Harley Quinn. But the very first one that we've had since we began this podcast.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of excitement and nostalgia about that. So whether or not there's rewatchability for this, I don't know that I'm going to go back and I can say I don't know that I'm going to go back and watch this 5 or 10 times like I would a classic Batman episode or even Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah.
I say it's definitely worth a watch, and I think that the people that were disappointed with Batman and Harley Quinn as far as the tone, as far as maybe not taking itself seriously enough, sort of, a lot of people's complaints were that it kind of poo-pooed on the past. You should be okay with this. I'd be very surprised to hear that you'd be disappointed with the tone and the way that this is done.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about that. It pays tribute to the past, but it doesn't live in it.
Correct. And
it made, like I said, it really did feel like coming home. It felt like Christmas morning. I was so excited. I was so glad that we got to watch this together and watch a new DCAU thing
in 2019.
In 2019, it's pretty freaking cool, and you would have had to do something real bad to really disappoint us, but I think the fact that it was as solid and very good as it was is really a testament to they didn't just want to rest on their laurels, or they didn't want to just take advantage of fan goodwill. They tried their very best to tell a new, unique story just within this world. Mm-hmm. So as far as rewatchability goes, does it line up with that? Maybe, with that really top tier of those certain episodes or movies? Maybe not, but it's really strong.
We've talked so in the past, and again, please go back and listen to some of our old episodes. We'd love for you to listen to those and hear our thoughts on some of those. But we've talked about this in reverse, where an episode may get a low score, but we're like, yeah, definitely, you're not going to not watch this episode. Like, absolutely, you need to go back and watch this episode. This may work in reverse a little bit, where it is a higher score because we're excited about it, because it's really strong, and it checked off all of the boxes. Yeah. With that said, it may not be one that we return to every year or watch 5 or 10 more times, in the next decade or so, or even if we were to start a podcast 20 years from now to go back and say, all right, this is going to be one of the ones we have to watch. Yes. But I think for new stuff, which is what people are always craving, new things. Yeah. And rarely do those things live up to the hype.
Agreed.
Rarely, more often than not, it's like, man, why did you just poop all over my childhood?
If you've watched the more recent seasons of Arrested Development,
my goodness.
Depending on your feelings on modern Star Wars movies, like there's a lot of examples of old things being brought back, and for one reason or another, not being quite the same as they were. And you're going to deal with a certain percentage of fans who like that it's different, and that they're trying to go in a different direction, and there's going to be some fans who hate that it's different and feel because it feels like it's departed, it's gone too far away from what it was. And like we've said, I really think this movie did a very good job of like marrying those two roads. Like, agreed. It breaks new ground, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to crap on anybody's legacy. And we've talked about this in passing. We don't hate Batman and Harley Quinn. No. It's just a comedic story. Right. But I understand why people didn't like it. Right. Whereas this, I think, again, checks more of the boxes of what people were expecting from a DCAU project. Certainly. And so yeah, overall rewatchability, it's good. And in our score categories, technically it's very, very good.
Yes.
So definitely worth a watch if you're on the fence about purchasing this for some reason.
Yep.
Definitely, I would say go out and support this. If for no other reason, then the more we support these projects, the better chance there is of an official, full #JL reunion in the next year or two. And who knows, maybe there's a chance to see a Batman Beyond movie down the line, or a Superman movie, or a Static movie, or something, areas of the DCAU which haven't been as fleshed out as well as Batman and the Justice League have been. So overall, just real happy that this exists.
Same.
Happy that it was good, and it was a really enjoyable experience.
Absolutely. All right, that will bring us to the very end of our episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you have tuned in for this episode and not listened to past episodes, you can head over to DCAUreview.com. We have them archived. We have them broken down by category, supervillain, superhero, series. Definitely check those out. We can also get them on iTunes and also on the Google Podcasts app, so you can check those out. Also, don't forget to give us a follow on Twitter. We are desperately trying to give away free things. I mean, we're almost there. I feel like this weekend's gonna push us over the edge.
I can see it. I can feel it.
I can feel it happening. So make sure if you're listening to this and you haven't followed us, follow us at DCAU Review. Liam is the DCAU Twitter guru. Liam does all of our tweeting. Great stuff that's happening over there. Lots of fan art, discussions about different episodes. We would love to hear what your thoughts are once you've watched this, or maybe if you're sitting out and you've given up on DCAU after Batman or Harley Quinn. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. We'd love to interact with you. Liam, any closing thoughts?
Just again to wrap up, definitely want to talk to everybody once we get to 250 followers. We are within 10 of 250 followers as we record this. We will be giving away a free copy of the Almost Got Him board game. We'll go into more details on that once we hit that 250 followers, or you could go back and listen to our old episodes where we first explained it. But
it's true.
But we'll get back to that soon, hopefully. And very excited to announce starting next week. We've already mentioned this on Twitter, but the official announcement starting next week, we're doing a month of Batman stories, because we're in the 80th anniversary of Batman. Detective Comics 1000 came out just this past Wednesday.
Happy birthday, Dark Knight.
Happy birthday, Batman. It doesn't look 80. Kevin Conroy is definitely not 80.
Long live the Bat.
Absolutely. And to celebrate that, we're doing a month of Batman, but instead of going right back into Batman the Animated Series, we're going to be doing a month of Elseworlds Batman.
Super
kicking
excited.
off next week with our second ever episode that we'll be reviewing of Batman the Brave and the Bold.
We got a little movie tie-in also with it's a huge month for DC, obviously.
Absolutely.
With the Shazam, hashtag My Captain Marvel coming out, and that movie due out next weekend. We will have a episode of Batman Brave and the Bold that coincides with that. Very excited about getting that episode out. But thank you guys for listening to this. We know this is an extra long episode. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that you will check us out, follow us on Twitter, and give us some feedback. So, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Goodbye.